The New Mutants is a film that was absolutely loaded with potential, and that's what makes it such a fascinating case study. This movie focused on lesser known mutants from the X Men universe and intentionally distanced itself from the larger X Men brand. There were no Wolverine expectations, no Magneto speeches, no massive world ending stakes, and honestly, that should have been freeing. When you remove the weight of the X Men label, you're allowed to experiment, you're allowed to take risks, you're allowed to do something different. And the New Mutants definitely tried to do something different. The real question is, did it work? Or did it collapse under the weight of its own ideas? Quick spoiler warning before we go any further. We are diving fully into the New Mutants. If you haven't seen it and don't want spoilers, pause here, check it out, and then come back so we can talk about it together. Last spoiler warning. Alright, let's get into it. From the jump, this film had such potential for a strong foundation. The characters were essentially blank slates for casual audiences. Most people walking into this movie didn't know Dani Moonstar, Rain Sinclair, Illyana Rasputin, Cannonball, or Sunspot. That's a gift. That means the filmmakers could shape their first impressions, build emotional connections, and set these characters up for future stories. And it really does feel like that was the original intention, especially with the Essex Corporation looming in the background. The seeds for Mr. Sinister were clearly planted. So ask yourself this. How often does a superhero movie get that kind of creative freedom and still stumble? On top of that, the movie doesn't rely on the usual superhero formula. There's no clear superhero versus supervillain structure, no big third act end of world situation, no citywide destruction. Instead, the film leans into horror, and on paper that's a fantastic idea. When the trailers dropped, a lot of us assumed the horror would come from the experience of becoming a mutant itself. Losing control of your body, hurting people you love, being labeled a monster before you even understand what you are, that concept alone could carry an entire film. Think about how Get Out turned a social issue into horror. The New Mutants could have turned mutation into fear itself, but did it actually commit to that idea? In my opinion, not really. The film flirts with that concept but never fully embraces it. Instead of living in the present fear of transformation, the movie leans heavily on flashbacks and literal manifestations of trauma. The flashbacks are sad, sometimes effective emotionally, but they function mostly as exposition dumps. And flashbacks are tricky. If they're not essential, they can kill pacing and tension. I understand why they were used here. The characters are trapped in one location, so flashbacks give visual variety, but at what cost? Those flashbacks end up robbing the characters of organic development. Within minutes, we're told exactly who these characters are, what happened to them, and why they're there. The mystery evaporates. When I first watched the film, I was genuinely curious. What did Cannonball do? What happened with Sunspot? Was Illyana hiding? And once those answers are handed to us quickly, there's nothing left to discover. Do you think the film would have been stronger if we learned these truths through present day choices instead of flashbacks? The movie also can't seem to decide whether it wants these characters to be mysterious or emotionally open. They act secretive, but the film doesn't let that secrecy drive the plot. We learn their pasts, but those revelations don't fundamentally change anything. That's the biggest issue. Information in a story should matter. It should alter relationships, goals, or direction. Here, it just exists. The only character who technically has an arc is Dani Moonstar. She starts the film afraid, haunted by something she doesn't understand, and by the end she defeats the manifestation of that fear in the form of the demon bear. On paper, that works. In practice, the transformation doesn't feel earned. Dani doesn't actively struggle, fail, adapt, and grow in a way that feels gradual. Her change just kind of happens. And that's true for almost everyone in this movie. They begin as damaged, guarded people and end as a team ready to move forward, but the journey between those points is rushed and underdeveloped. Did you feel that emotional payoff when they finally stood together, or did it feel like the movie skipped a few steps? The Dani and Rain relationship is another example of this. It's sweet and representation matters, but it also feels like a shortcut. The film leans on the relationship to manufacture emotional weight instead of building strong individual arcs. When Rain risks herself against the demon bear, are you worried because of who she is as a character or because you don't want the relationship to end? The distinction matters. Relationships should enhance character depth, not replace it. A lot of these problems stem directly from the plot structure. Horror films usually establish the threat early. You know what you're dealing with, even if you don't fully understand it. Here, the movie waits too long to clarify what the danger actually is. Yes, we can assume the hospital is shady. Yes, Dr. Reyes is obviously hiding something, but assumptions aren't storytelling. The film needs to actively guide us. Instead, the story drifts. Dani arrives, she meets the other mutants, they have therapy sessions, weird things happen, and only near the end does everything collide. There's also a lack of meaningful conflict. Dr. Reyes is technically the antagonist, but there's no real push and pull. Dani doesn't have a strong want. Reyes doesn't have depth beyond following orders. Conflict isn't just opposition, it's a battle of desires. And here, that battle barely exists until the final act. Do you think the movie would have worked better if Reyes was more morally complex, or if Dani had a clearer goal from the start? And speaking of Dr. Reyes, this one really stings. If you're familiar with the comics, Cecilia Reyes is a solid character in stories like Operation Zero Tolerance. Seeing her reduced to a generic villain following Essex orders feels like a missed opportunity. Honestly, that applies to almost every character here. Do you feel like any of them were done justice compared to their comic counterparts? By the time the mutants finally learn they're being groomed as weapons, it's almost by accident. That revelation should have been the spine of the film. The story should have either leaned into a slow burn mystery where the kids uncover the truth piece by piece, or a psychological horror where their powers are the danger. Instead, the New Mutants tries to be both and doesn't fully succeed at either. There's so much filler that nothing lands as hard as it should. And that's the real tragedy here. This movie came out in 2020 in an era where superhero films are everywhere. Audiences are sophisticated now. We've seen The Dark Knight, Logan, Avengers Endgame, and Joker. Doing something different is the right move. Going horror was the right instinct. Using unknown characters was smart. But ambition alone isn't enough. Execution matters. The New Mutants feels like a movie that might have been celebrated in the 1990s, but today the bar is much higher. That said, I didn't hate this movie, and that might be the most frustrating part. There's something oddly watchable about it. The cast does their best. Anya Taylor-Joy's Illyana is entertaining. Lockheed's debut is genuinely fun. There are moments where you glimpse the movie this could have been. And as an X-Men fan, seeing mutants on screen still carries weight, even when the film stumbles. If you've never seen the New Mutants, I'd still say give it a watch. Just temper your expectations. Don't expect a masterpiece. Look at it as a what-if experiment. And after you watch it, I want to know what you think. Was the horror approach a good idea? Did the characters work for you? And do you think this movie deserves a second chance in a different form? Let me know in the comments, because I genuinely think this is one of the most interesting misfires in superhero cinema. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it.